Why is it that friendships can become so frustrating when just a little while ago it was going so well? In today's podcast, we're going to look at 3 ways that friendships can bring frustration and how to get perspective on that. Welcome to the Steps and Tools for Emotional Intelligence podcast. I'm Dr. Greg Hamlin, and today's we're going to look at 3 ways that friendships bring frustration. It's probably unavoidable, although it's nice when these frustrations are not present. But if you understand what they are and why they work the way they do, it's a little bit easier to write it out. The first way that friendship can be frustrating is when there is a mismatch in how big each person wants the friendship to be. It might sound like a strange way to talk about a friendship being a big friendship, but I worded it that way deliberately because there is a metaphor that I want to introduce to you that I have spoken about before. But friendships are oftentimes can be compared to buildings. And when you think of a city, if you think of New York City or think of another downtown area where you have buildings of different levels and sizes, you can kind of think of your different friendships throughout your life as corresponding to different buildings. Some friendships are 50-story buildings. They're really good. They're really big in your life, and they're really tall, and they are solid, and they stay there, and they're very wonderful. Other friendships on the other side of the scale would be 1-story friendships that are just, these are your acquaintances. These are people that you know their name. You may not even know their last name, but you know their name and you interact with them here and there. They're an acquaintance. And then you have friendships that are everywhere in between. You have 10-story friendships. You have 5-story friendships. You have the 20-story friendships that seem like you're really clicking with this person and you have a lot in common, but it can only go so far. And then you have 30-story friendships. And it's helpful when you are feeling frustration in a friendship to simply ask yourself, how many stories is this friendship for me? But where the frustration comes is not in how tall the friendship is or how big it is, how much depth it has, but it's in the mismatch. Because if I'm friends with you, I may want it to be a 30-story friendship, but you may only want it to be a 10-story friendship. So I'm going to be frustrated because I keep wanting it to be more than it is, and you just don't have any interest in reciprocating beyond a certain point. And this is just really common. Oftentimes it's this metaphor, which is, by the way, is not my own metaphor, but it has helped me make sense out of different frustrations in friendships when they haven't worked out the way I hoped they would. Another frustration in friendship is what I think of as a context-dependent friendship. Now, all friendships have a context. They have a time and space. They have a place, they have a location, they have some kind of physical space where they work themselves out, where you see the person, where you talk with them. Even if that space is cyberspace, it's still a context. There's a context to every friendship. However, some friendships are more context dependent than others. So you might go work for a company and there's somebody sitting in the cubicle next to you and you become friends with them and you feel like you're really good friends, but then one of you gets another job, leaves the company after a couple of years, and the friendship starts to just sort of wither away. Or sometimes it just dies very suddenly. And that's what I would call a context-dependent friendship, because for whatever reason, whatever made that friendship tick, it wasn't enough to survive the change in context. And so sometimes it's helpful to think about that because it can help you be a little less disappointed when you have to go through a change in your location and change in your job. You realize that friendship may or probably won't survive this. And as you go through life, you get better at calling it and knowing what's about to happen if you think about some of these things. And a third way that friendship can be frustrating is what I call the growth factor, and that is that you grow in different ways and you grow at different rates. So a classic example of this would be someone who, let's say they grew up in not feeling a lot of affirmation from their situation growing up, but they did learn that people would like them if they served some kind of function for that person. If they helped them in some way or listened well to their problems or, was their cheerleader or, whatever the function was, practical, helpful, acts of service, whatever. And by performing that function, they end up having a fair number of friends. But then this person begins to grow personally in new ways. Maybe they go into therapy, maybe they get a coach, maybe there's just some life experiences that cause them to grow. And as they grow, they start to realize this characteristic about them, that they tend to make friends by serving a function. And the problem with that is that you end up surrounding yourself with people who are taking from you, but not necessarily giving a lot to you. And so as the person grows, they start to think, I really want friends who give me as much as I give them. And so the friendships begin to be strained, and the people that this person once had a good friendship with now is not liking it the way it's going and is frustrated, and maybe there's even some strong words exchanged, and sometimes it can be in end on not on a good note, or it can just sometimes wither away and die a natural death. But oftentimes I've seen this for myself and for others, that friendships come and go because we grow at different rates, and we have different seasons of fast, rapid personal growth in our lives, during a period of time, and that can often change even what kind of friends we want to have. So these are just 3 ways that friendships can be frustrating. There are more, but to put it all together, one thing that I think about is the fact that every friendship starts out with things that are not going to hold the friendship. For example, you start out with a friend because you met in a certain place, you met through some common activity, a project. You may be matched well. You may be matched well in terms of how big you want the friendship to be. And you might be growing together in some way, either in business or in some other area of life, a skill, or in school, or some way that you're acquiring knowledge. But when these things change, there are times when we realize that a friendship, something magical has happened in that along the way, where the friendship is more than just those things that gave birth to it. That the friendship has some mysterious kind of attachment where you realize that even if this person moves to another state, or I move to another state, that this person is still a close friend. And when you have that, when the context changes and it survives that, when you have different expectations and needs and it survives those mismatches in expectations and needs, and it has this ability to be resilient and withstand all these natural changes in life, you really realize you have a treasure. And so it's important to not judge a friendship too quickly, because you never know which ones are going to come out of just simple circumstances. And so you can't evaluate it it's not good to evaluate it too quickly because you may be cutting off something that given enough time, that magic will happen. And there'll be a real connection that's going to last for a lifetime or for at least a very long time. So I hope these 3 ways that friendship can be frustrating will help you navigate through the wonderful human experience of making friends and keeping them. I'm Dr. Greg Hamlin. Thanks for listening.